I just wanted to talk a little bit more about that steering group and how you refreshed that and just how you went about doing that, if that's okay.
Yeah, so from our point of the steering group, we went through a stage where we had the same, I guess, members attending and the same members not attending. We wanted to kind of refresh it to ensure it, I guess, reflected our geographical picked area, reflected our audiences that we wanted to target for Bury, which was young people and the worklessness audience. So we went away to try and look at existing members to see which one of them were critical to attend, and if necessary, we went and kind of spoke to them on a one-to-one basis to kind of understand their pressures currently, their thoughts on moving more in the local pilot, whether they were able to engage with the steering group in the future. The second part of it was we looked at alternative members. So if those particular areas, let's say, for example, education needed to be represented, was there an alternative person we could attend or we could invite, sorry? And again, if that person was identified, we went to see them on a one-to-one basis to understand the work that they were doing, the priorities they had, and then kind of tie in that with the local pilot and moving more. And the last step of it was to kind of look at the gaps of our steering group. What areas did our steering group not truly or authentically reflect? Again, I think at that point, we had a gap in terms of community involvement in the steering group, and at our next steering group, we've got a community member who's going to attend, and that's taken I guess a couple of visits, kind of speak to that community member, just to talk to them about local pilot, what they're doing in their community, and then mention the steering group and the thought that we thought there'd be a value to it and whether they wanted to attend. And likewise, at that point, we didn't have the young people audience represented. We had someone from education who wasn't attending, but we now have someone from education, actually the assistant director of learning, attending our group. But we also wanted that kind of grassroots kind of representation. So I went to see some colleagues who had formerly worked with, who were in charge of the youth participation agenda. So in charge of, or involved with our youth service, involved with our youth parliament, and involved with something called Circles of Influence, where young people come together. At that point on local pilot, we were at the consultation engagement event. So it was their suggestion that we had audiences that we could consult with, which was fantastic, and they were happy to kind of attend in the future because they saw the value of moving more to what they were doing. So that's the way we kind of looked at refreshing it, and we'll probably look to refresh it at regular basis in the future, just to take that step back to see whether the steering group truly reflects what we're trying to do in the direction we're taking.
And thanks, Pritesh. And how do you feel about the sort of composition of the steering group now, and what difference do you think that has made?
I think the steering group's probably given, or the refreshment has given a sense of energy and a sense of purpose to the group. I think Richard Rovell, she came to the first one after the refresh, and there was a different energy in the room. Different discussions, different voices, which sparked other people to kind of speak up and talk as well. And I think there's that authentic interest. So we ran Lucy organised our first kind of virtual steering group during COVID, quite a few months after COVID hit really, and myself and Lucy kind of met before, and a lot of those people in the steering group are involved with our local COVID response work. So we weren't really sure what our attendance was going to be, engagement, due to people having other kind of priorities, but we were pleasantly surprised that attendance was very good, like probably one of the best attendances we had. Engagement was really good, and it felt authentic and with real energy, I think.
Thanks, Pritesh. And obviously, yeah, you've spoken quite a lot about that authentic interest within the steering group, the influence to sort of connect with others. And obviously it was one of the steering group members that enabled you to sort of change the response, if you like, with the Fit and Fed programme.
We already had plans to do that earlier this year after running a successful fitting programme last year. This year we completely changed the way we was going to run because COVID hit us, so it meant that the approach we was originally going to use wouldn't be suitable anymore. So we were linked in with our local community groups who had forged food banks because of COVID. So in Bury we had emergency community hubs that people could call into who needed help with medication and shopping, and we would signpost people to food banks from that. And lots of different food banks popped up across the Bury and one in particular in Ratcliffe in our LP area. So we linked in with them. And originally wanted to link in with the local school, was from our director of education from our steering group. Although when we initially started to redesign the Fit and Fed to be delivered this year, there was a different steering group set up, or different meetings set up with different people in the room that already come forward willingly out of their normal day job, if you will, to help in some way, shape or form in the community deliver something and help tackle this food poverty agenda that was coming up. And although we had yes, a strategic input from our steering group, prior to this we'd already had a meeting with an individual who manages the school catering team who wanted to be involved anyway. So the link, there was a link there and there was a link there, and then it was just me joining up them dots really, and that conversation had already happened because of proactive people already in their day job, as well as having the proactive people in our steering group where families could come and receive a food parcel from us, a packed lunch, because that would tackle the holiday hunger. Traditionally their children will have been accessing free school meals over the school period. So, you know, holiday hunger was already going on before COVID, but even more so over this summer, with children and families being out of that school provision earlier on. So we wanted to use the school, but however we couldn't because they'd been shut down and needed to have a deep clean before reopening for the September term. So then we looked at other avenues, and we knew that we needed to have an outdoor venue to make sure that we could engage with families safely, and if we were able to deliver some activity, because when we first planned to deliver the Fit and Fed, we didn't actually know if we would be able to go ahead with it. It was all if, buts and maybes, all off the back of whether delivery can happen or not. So we designed it where families could come in a 20-minute slot and speak to myself, a health trainer, and we had an instructor there as well that would deliver either a taster of a 20-minute activity, or we would signpost them onto different activity, either online or led walks that were local to the area, and they would receive the packed lunch and the food parcel there. And we did that 1 day a week over 4 weeks. What we set out to do was tackle holiday hunger, and I think the families that came along definitely were struggling to probably feed the family the amount that they needed to, and they were the ones that were accessing the food bank. They were the ones that would traditionally be accessing free school meals at the school. But then on top of that, with the physical activity element added to it, so people going off, finding out new routes that they could walk in their local area at a time where they had the time to do it. The government was saying, now's the time, you go out and do your well, at that time you could go out for more than an hour a day, but now it's important, and the government are reinforcing that message. So with us then providing that resource, even if it was just a family walk or an online activity, or just a little 20-minute taster of activity with their family, they left there feeling more positive, better mindset, wanting to come back, wanting to do more, wanting to find out what else was going on and what they could access as a family as well. And then obviously the longevity of the implications with the new engagement for the LP area in terms of looking at developing a play street.
You could just tell us more about the Bury moving strategy, and just give a little bit of an overview for us there.
Yeah, just in terms of a bit of background, our Bury moving strategy has been developing over the last probably year or so, but it was officially launched a couple of weeks ago. I guess in terms of our Bury moving strategy, it is a strategy for the whole borough, and not just a strategy just for the council. So it should be a team Bury approach with, you know, lots of different stakeholders involved at a lot of different levels. The basis of it is obviously to improve or increase moving more in our borough, which obviously benefits a lot of different areas within our borough, including public health and, you know, community safety and everything like that. The idea, probably similar to GM Moving, is trying to empower people to move more, encouraging partnerships, authentic and true kind of shared ownership of how we help people to move more. And one of the main things within the Moving More strategy, similar to Local Pilot, I guess it's how we kind of work smarter to understand our communities and work with them in terms of that kind of co-voice and co-production. There is a part in there about how we embed physical activity and moving more into local policy. So in terms of us, it's a real tick into, you know, I've always seen Local Pilot in Bury as twofold in terms of how do we change the system to make it easier for people to move more, but then how do we also activate people to move more. And also the strategy wants to try and kind of target inequalities and look at place-based approaches. Again, a tick for our Local Pilot principles and how we want to work as well in terms of place-based, and at the moment for us in Ratcliffe. And the strategy talks about trying to do things a little bit differently, you know, trying to work in a different way, which is good. Initially, a couple of Fridays ago when the strategy was launched, one of the focus areas is going to be around walking and cycling and how we support that for people to do that in their everyday lives. And there is also reference to the local delivery pilot within the strategy, but I'm trying to work a little bit more about how we embed it further, the local pilot principles more and more in the Bury moving strategy. We are at a bit of an advantage because two of the people leading the strategy also sit within our steering group as well, so we have a position to kind of try and influence that as well. At the heart of it, the vision, I've got this written down, is more active people for a healthier Bury, where physical activity is the heart of an inclusive economy, a quality and sustainable environment, and thriving communities. So that really helps with what we're trying to do and what we're trying to be doing with the local pilot. There are kind of objectives and there are guiding principles, and again there's some overlay with the local pilot principles, and linked with obviously GM moving targets. You know, we want to get to a place where 75% of our Bury population are active by 2025. So there's a real synergy, but I do think there's more we can do from a local pilot direction into the strategy as well.
In how you manage a steering group which has both the strategic input and people who are sort of in positions of power in terms of decision making, with the community voice and, you know, potentially getting that balance. And a specific question coming in from Annette in Tameside around how might you tackle questions around governance or the financing when you've got community members there who might have a different sort of take on things?
Yeah, I think from our point of view, we're trying to be open and transparent with everything we do. So things like strategic decisions or budget isn't an over concern with community members that we invite to our steering group. So our steering group isn't an open invite to everyone in the community to come to our steering group, but it is those key influencers, and I forgot what one of your little bubbles was, but those key people in communities who help us to achieve what we want to do. They can sit in our steering group as a voice of the communities that they represent and the communities that they know so well, and the different challenges that some of our communities face. These community members who sit in our steering group can truly reflect that and bring that lived experience in. I do think there's a balance. I think I tried answering to Annette in the chat that there is that balance of, you know, community members not, I guess, being gatekeepers, and I think part of that is not being complacent with patting ourselves on the back that we've got a true representative of our steering group and community members sit on our group. I think it is important to continue those conversations in that wider community at a place-based level to ensure that us as officers or us involved with the local pilot still continue to learn about the community and not rely on that one voice in the steering group, I'd say.